We have a much bigger vision of what we're looking to build. This is just the first inning. We kept seeing paths of opportunity. 2.5 years later, here we are. It's special. It's pretty crazy. If you have that kind of mindset, you end up building really kick-ass stuff.
Welcome to the Masters of Business podcast with Daniel Beer.
We're jumping in. This is Masters of Business. This is Ryan Young, founder, CEO of Fello. And it is probably, I don't know, you tell us if, in my mind, it's the biggest, fastest, most important technology in serving the real estate space, really, that's come along for me and, well, a few years. And I don't want to waste time trying to timeline it, but there's only a handful. There's always toys and tools and little shiny objects out there, but there's a few I don't know, it feels to me maybe every 4, 5, 6 years, something that actually makes a true impact, that becomes a central technology that serves a really, really big industry, right?
I have a thesis around industry. I have a thesis around why that is every 4 or 5 years that we can talk about.
You agree with that? Because I'm just kind of pulling that out of pure
And here's my
gut feel.
thesis. Great innovative product comes out and you see mass flock to it, right? Like, you know, the virality of it is massive, right? Like it just blows up. And then for the next 2 years, you have multiple competitors ultimately duplicate or try to replicate, right? And then it gets so watered down. And, one of the things that we're doing is really scaling this. So we're investing so much into innovation and growth and scale so that what people are building and copying us to is to where we were when we first built 2 years ago, and we're continuing to scale and the escape velocity, as they say. But I think every 4 or 5 years, what I've seen in the real estate industry is one person builds something special, a bunch of people copy it, that kind of model or product gets somewhat diluted, and then all of a sudden finally there's a new breakthrough with a new product and a new idea that moves the needle based off of the pain points of what we saw over the last 5 years. And then all of a sudden there's the clear, first to market, leader in the space. And then you kind of go through this cycle again of people realize that this new product or this new idea is catching steam, seeing a lot of, traction, people gravitating towards it. And then everyone else jumps on the bandwagon. And it's this vicious cycle of a new idea, great concept. And then all of a sudden people are like, wow, that's making an impact. Let's do it. And the challenge with the people that are copying it, by the time it's never done as well. And by the time they catch up to the idea of what they originally built, the company that originally built it should be further ahead of what they built and iterated and gotten more client feedback. So I could go on for probably way too long, but that's
You're
something
saying
I've
that
observed.
first mover, so long as they built something
First
solid.
mover advantage. Yep.
But if there's a solid first mover, meaning they built a sound company, they remain innovative, right? It can't just be that you threw something out there. But if those things are true, then your observation is they're hard to catch.
100%. First mover advantage. The difference is, and you've probably seen this as well, and look, I don't know if maybe it's because Fello is venture backed or we have a much bigger vision of what we're looking to build. This is just kind of the first inning. I think a lot of times what you see is with a lot of products out there is they build something special, they see massive organic reach really quickly, and then they start to see big margin and they stop innovating because they become more attached to the profitability versus the continued innovation and continued growth and continuing to build proprietary, defensible product that ultimately they end up getting caught. And then once they get caught, that's where it becomes oversaturated and diluted. And that's when all of a sudden the idea seems less sexy, seems less cool because so many people are doing it. And then that's the opportunity for the next big idea.
It's really interesting, man. I had never thought of that. And it kind of made me think of a number of things, but you're right. Because I've always had this feeling gosh, only every 4 or 5 years, maybe 6 years, is there something significant. But essentially people stop innovating, they stop creating something new. They turn off their most creative brain. They just say, oh, okay, there's, by the way, we haven't even explained to the group here, and we're going to let you guys know, we're just kind of into a really interesting conversation very quickly here. But we'll explain what Fello is, and we won't spend a ton of time on it, Ryan, but you can give them the 15-second version, because a lot of our listeners aren't even in the real estate space, but just so they
Yep.
understand what it is, how big your company is, what it's
Yep.
become in what period of time. But just to finish my thought here, or digesting your thought really, is then everyone just starts to say, oh, well, that thing is working. You're in the seller lead gen space. And so then all they want to do is create the better version of what you have. By the time they even come close, you're so far ahead. They play catch up the rest of their life. And it's interesting watching that, like whether right or wrong, and I know you didn't intend for it, but you kind of walked me right into it, is that's, in my point of view, from where I sit and stand, that's exactly what's happening in the brokerage space.
Yep. Oh,
Or in
yeah.
the
Spot
brokerage
on.
space, the brokerage that I belong to, eXp Realty, comes along. They create this absolutely new way
Spot
of
on.
doing business, this cloud brokerage business with a incentivized, pay structure that makes the company kind of fuel itself through its own agents and grow. And in any case, it completely changes the face of brick and mortar brokerage. Since then, there's literally no innovation in terms of a brand new kind of absolutely different way of thinking about it. Everyone else is just trying to be the better EXP. By the time they even come close to sniffing at them, they're doing what we were doing 6 years ago.
Spot on. The funny part about it is, this is just what I observe as, being in a business that's brokerage agnostic, but everyone after EXP, the pitch is normally, don't you wish you got on the ground floor at EXP? Well, here's your chance to get into the ground floor of the next EXP. And what I really appreciate about EXP, and look, there's great new 2.0 type of models that work, and they all have their value adds and their own unique value propositions. And we're very fortunate, and I have to be somewhat diplomatic on, just because our
You don't need
clients
to
are,
walk into this one. You didn't intend to take us here, but I
yeah, no,
couldn't
no,
help make the
but
parallel.
what
Yeah.
I really appreciate about EXP, and I'm not with EXP or affiliated with it, but it's like what I appreciate with Glenn is bringing in Leo. And I think that was such a phenomenal move, because Leo is so well respected and was a actual operator. And you talk about like that, like when I say like with product and technology, we have to continue to innovate. Glenn could have stayed CEO, right? You guys still had tailwinds, but like I always look at it like driving stick shift and shifting gears. There's there's grace in shifting gears where the passenger doesn't feel it, right? Like you know exactly when to shift into the next gear. And it's tough to time that perfectly where no one feels it. You have to do it when you still have momentum and you don't have all these headwinds slowing you down, because then it feels like, oh, they're only shifting because they're moving backwards or they're slowing down, right? But you also don't want to do it when you have so much momentum where then all of a sudden it's like, wait, I don't understand. Like, why are we ruining a great thing? So there's this like beauty and art to like this perfect like transition where it's like, we're still moving forward. We still have great momentum. And it's kind of like in a relay race, you pass that baton to the person waiting for it, and they're going to start taking off and they have all this energy. And I think that Leo has done a phenomenal job and EXP has done a phenomenal job of like, while it's not the innovation side of technology, it's the progression, it's the evolution, the next step of this brokerage that was the leader in this 2.0 space that was kind of first to market. And so, I think they're doing it really well.
Really beautiful, man. Thank you. That's awesome. And in fact, I'll be interviewing Glenn on this podcast, and you gave me a question. I'm absolutely going to, I'm curious to ask him,
Right.
what's that like letting go? What's that like, and by the way, let's just get this out of the way because we're in a really interesting conversation. I don't want to distract from it, but just give people like very quickly, what's the size of your company? Where was it just a few years ago?
Yeah.
Hint, hint, unexistent. And so how'd you grow?
Yeah.
You grew it. We'll get into how you grew it this fast later on.
Yeah.
I want to stay in this space of CEO. I think there's some really universal lessons that we can jump into, and I'm curious to pick your brain on something, but just give people some context for those that don't have it.
Yeah. So we launched Fello. We went to market October of 2022. It's scaled extremely quickly. From a revenue perspective, it's well into the 8 figures in annual recurring revenue. We have 110 employees or team members. We have about 20,000 users on the platform, 2,300 teams. We just launched a mortgage product, which we're really excited about. We're already starting to see some traction there. That's been fun from a founder-led sales standpoint of as I've been going into the mortgage industry, being a real estate guy. Um, and now we're going all the way from, we started with really small business, SMB, and now we have clients like Realtor.com and Movoto and, larger enterprise strategics as well. And we're excited to go deeper into even outside of the real estate industry into these large enterprise type of opportunities. And, they all have the same problem. Small businesses, big businesses, they all sit on databases. A lot of them are big databases and a lot of them are under monetized. And it ultimately really impacts the economics and the financials of their business. And Fello has just found a way to help people drive a lot of revenue out of their database and leveraging a lot of data and enriching with a lot of data. And it's just amazing. I don't know if it's what we initially set out to be, but we kept just getting feedback and seeing little kind of, paths of opportunity, and those led to another path. And 2.5 years later, here we are. And I mean, it's special, it's pretty crazy.
So let me hit you with, I don't know if anyone's ever asked you this question, but we're in the conversation about CEOs, growth, letting go, and the art and science of, of not doing it too early, not doing it too late. Some don't ever do it at all.
Yep.
Can you imagine a world in which what would it take? What would it need? I know you're crushing it. So you're probably still in that we have way too much momentum space.
Yeah.
How would you know, or how would you be, can you see a world in which that could happen at some point?
Yeah. So here's the funny thing. I talked to my co-founders and the board about this. I have imposter syndrome as a CEO, right? Like, look, we're running a really big company. I mean, like, and I'm not talking like when I'm talking 8 figures in revenue, it's not like volume from a real estate agent. It's like, it's a big business. Like, and it's really cool. Like, and I'm so grateful for what we've built, but I have the imposter syndrome around, like, I've never scaled a software company. I've never scaled a 8-figure, with aspirations to going to 9 figures in recurring revenue type of business. Am I the right guy? And I think the consistent feedback that I hear is you could pass it along to someone that's done it before you. But, Brian Chesky always talks about this as well, as they're not the biological parent of the company. And the biological parent is always going to love their kid more than anyone else loves their kids. They're going to love their company more than anyone else loves their company. They're going to fight harder. They're going to work harder. They're going to be scrappier. And so while you could replace me with a CEO that's scaled to 9 figures in recurring revenue, ultimately to them, they're coming in to do a job. And if things don't go as planned, they'll move to the next company and do their job as the CEO. The biological parent never leaves their kids, even when they're going through trouble, right? And so I think what it's been pretty consistent to me is, unless I lose passion for what we're doing and I'm obsessed with it, I think about it all day, all night, I love it. And not from a standpoint of like, I'm always working, but from a standpoint of I'm so inspired by little things I see, a text message, something on social media, an advertisement, software that I'm using, whatever it may be, it's always inspiring me on how can we incorporate this and implement this into our product. Until I lose that, I don't see it being the right time, and so it's interesting with the transition with Leo. Ultimately, Glenn, and I'm making an assumption, saw either an opportunity with where he was, that he felt there was limitations as him being the leader, that there wasn't enough room for growth with where he was or with his relationship with the industry. And I think it was so, I just think it was so forward thinking of him making that transition when he did. And I don't know, maybe he lost passion to the grind. I doubt it, but maybe whatever it could be for the 100 different reasons, but like that biological parent, you want to take them over the plugged in CEO, unless the biological parent has just lost that fire in their belly to keep growing.
Really awesome. Awesome. So then, you know, what gave you the, like, I think a lot of us want to do things, but then wait, we haven't done it before. But even that like plug-in CEO, well, he hadn't done before until he did.
Yep.
And at some point someone has to. But nevertheless, you're not a tech guy.
Nope.
So what made you what gave you the guts or the chutzpah
Yeah.
or the just the gall, is that the saying?
Yeah.
What gave you the right to even think you could do this?
All right. So I want to just give a little bit of context around how this all came about. So I'm not a tech guy. I'm a real estate guy. Right. But I would consider myself visionary, not in the like egotistical way, like I'm a visionary, like, but I'm like always, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm always thinking like, what's next? And so when I started my real estate, or when I, started growing our real estate team, I started actually this guaranteed sale program. You've done it as well. I started buying houses. Next thing you know, I was like, wow, I'm making some money buying houses. Let's start doing this. So I started a company called Flash House. Flash House started growing relatively quickly. We were acquiring 15 to 20 homes a month. We were spending six figures direct to consumer marketing, get a cash offer on your home. And I started to see, but no one knew that I owned Flash House. We intentionally did it. We wanted to insulate the young team, my real estate company, to Flash House because we didn't want the real estate company to think that I was like sending out low offers. And then there was this reputation around town that like Ryan Young with the young team lowballs you on offers, right? And so Flash House was really designed to like create some insulation, and just scale this acquisition company. What I started seeing was people in the young team's database started requesting cash offers from Flash House. Now, remember, they had no idea that I owned Flash House. So I started getting really pissed saying like, these are past clients. These are people that like I've sold houses to. And it's like, if they're requesting cash offers from Flash House, where else are they going? And so this is where like, once again, not a tech guy, but all of a sudden I started thinking, this is a challenge. What can we build? What can we do? Can we integrate within another platform? Can we start whatever it is? And I was actually having a conversation with a past client of mine that was a tech guy. And I was telling him this problem, and he was kind of throwing around some ideas on how we can build this kind of funnel that drives people into Flash House. Then we can push them over, or from young team, then we can push them over to Flash House. And I was starting to get like obsessed like with this idea. I'm like, wait, you can do that? Like that, I don't understand. How do you go from one to the next? And they talk to each other. And so I started, cutting pretty big checks. Like it started off as, tens of thousands every month. To next thing you know, it started to get to six figures a month investing in a technology, right? And starting to build this stuff. And then we started building a team. And then all of a sudden it like went to the next step of like, wait, there's more opportunity in actually marketing to the database than the actual acquisition of the home. What about if Fello is this database marketing engagement component, right? And the reason why I think I do well as a tech founder in building technology is I'm also a user of the technology, and I find myself always being more focused on where we're going versus what we have, right? And it's probably one of the biggest frustrations that I have of being the CEO of Fello is I'm also a user of the Fello product, and I know what's on the roadmap for the next 12 months, and I know how powerful it's going to be. And I want it now for my own real estate company, right? And I want it for your company, et cetera. And so I think because I'm just so curious and so intrigued and infatuated with like, wait, you can do this. And then we start doing it. And I'm like, wait, what if we could do this on top of it? They're like, well, you can do that. I'm like, well, how do you do that? Well, if we do this, and next thing you know, and it's like, I'm just always looking at it like through this lens of awe and amazement. And I think when you're building technology, and I'm not actually the technical builder, right? We've got about 50 engineers, CTOs, designers, product people, et cetera. But when you're like obsessed with it and you're constantly thinking about, what if we could do? And it's always that what if, and there's always a way you can. It's just a matter of time, resources, investment. I think if you constantly have that kind of mindset, you end up building really kick-ass stuff. And the funny thing is, and I think I've seen this, the best CEOs, the best leaders in the tech space, they have to be obsessed with their product. And if they're just looking at it as a business, the business is a byproduct of building great technology, solving a problem. And I think that's something that I just really focus on. And it's what I get like most fired up about.
Very cool. I think that as I'm listening to that, I think that's something that could be working in your favor is the fact that you don't speak technical, like you're not a programmer. And what I
Yeah.
mean is I've seen like in my own world that when I stay in my space, my job, my role as the leader of my business is what are we going to do? Where are we going? When I stay in that space, everything works out pretty darn well. And you have to have good people in your organization for that to be true. And thank goodness I
100%.
do, is just like you do. When I start to design, because I do speak the realistic, right? Like I speak the language of how, when I get into the how, which I can speak that language better than you can speak that language because you're not a programmer, you don't.
100%.
So I get sucked in sometimes to here's what I want to do. Here's why I want to go there. Great. That's my job. But then I start going, and I think we could design it like this and like this and like this. And we could have the email go out and then the hook comes in. And I start to get in the way of letting my people execute how what I want is going to happen. Things slow down. I become a bottleneck. And it just puts strain on the organization. I get in the way of people, take away their creativity. They stop thinking as much because, I'm doing the thinking for them. But in your space, because you can't go in and actually program the thing, you're almost insulated or protected from that. And that all you can really explain is, here's what I want to accomplish. Here's why it needs to happen because it's going to help
100%.
realtors. Like, can you guys go figure out how? And then you just get out of the way.
100%. And, it's funny because my co-founder, who's chief product officer, he's always like, you're so impatient. And it's like, the reason why I'm impatient is because I have no idea how long this stuff actually takes to build and what's involved in like the tech. I'd be like, can we just do this one little
Did
thing?
I just ask you a, 30-minute favor or a 30-day favor? I have no idea.
100%. It's always like, can we just do this one little thing? And he's like, dude, that one little thing requires like, you have to design it. You have to identify how it like folds into the architecture. You have to have UI, UX, like, where's it going to sit? What happens when you click that button? Where's it going to go? And I'm like, dude, can't you just build that one little thing? And it's like and everything is, there's layers to it. There's dependencies to it. And, I'm learning, and now I have to be like very sensitive to like, I know the roadmap is really full. I think it would be extremely beneficial if we could squeeze this one thing in. And it's like, but if we can't, I always have like the hedge of like, but if we can't, we can push it into Q2, and I'm learning. They definitely get frustrated, but I do think that's what pushes us. I feel because I'm so close to the industry, and it's what I'm most nervous about is starting to go into other industries. And that is our plan. While we go deeper into the real estate industry, like I said, mortgage, insurance, home services, a lot of similar problems in those industries as the real estate industry, where I kind of say I have a little bit of the, imposter syndrome is in the real estate industry. I can get a text from you. Like I've gotten texts from you before that are like, dude, this would be really cool if, we could create advertisers on our dashboards. And it's like 100%. So I get this feedback in real time and I'm, kind of synthesizing it and then taking it in the best way I can present it to the product team. Because if I don't bring them like a full flushed out thought and like a problem that we're actually solving, a lot of times it doesn't go anywhere. Right. And I get so much feedback in real time from our users, from my friends, from my network, et cetera. It's what makes it so hard because I want to build it all. But it's like, you can't build it all. Like there's only so many resources there. You got to stay you have to say no to things. So it's interesting.
Let's stick with that then. How do you know when you're looking at a distraction, a shiny object, something that's going to take you off course versus a true opportunity worth pursuing?
Yeah. I would say you got to focus on the mission. What is your mission? And so our mission is to empower businesses of all sizes with data-driven intelligence. Now, to the real estate industry, that might be like, don't you guys just send like home value emails, right? But it's like, when you go to your Fellow dashboard and all of a sudden we can find someone's address and we can tell you if they used to live there or they don't live there, we can remove addresses, et cetera. And then all of a sudden we can show you everyone in your database that has a 7% interest rate and everyone in your database who's been in their home for over 5 years or 10 years or 30 years and has equity and all these different data points. We are building right now this foundation of what I would consider is like this enriched data, which I would consider is their data. So like we're paying 7 figures a year for different data sources to be able to provide you all this really like granularity within your database. And then I say, plus our data, right, which is us observing all the people in your database and over 40 million emails that are sending out every month, who's engaging with them, is ultimately like this proprietary Fellow data, right? And so it's like, we're looking at it as what are we seeing across all, 40 plus million contacts that are synced into Fellow? Are we seeing consistency amongst people over the age of 70 that are starting to transact? Are we seeing people that have equity in their home between 20 to 40% in this geographical territory? And so it's like, when I say like empowering business of all sizes with data-driven intelligence, we are getting to the place where I can tell you, based off of 40 million contacts and observing the data and the engagement and the transactions behind those contacts, I can start to get very predictive for you to make better business decisions within your Fellow account, or even creating automations, marketing campaigns based off of those data points, targeting those people. And so I know like to most people on the surface, it's like, what the hell is this guy even talking about? But like the visibility and the data that we are observing, and, you think of machine learning and it's getting smarter and smarter and feeding models. That's where I get so fired up, is like where there is something really big here,
Really, that's awesome, man. That's it's just a lot to take in. I'm just impressed with how much you have to take in such a short period of time, and how
Dude,
well you're
2
doing.
years ago, I didn't even know what we'd be talking about. I wouldn't even understand what I'm saying. And I try not to like, I'm just so deep. Once again, when I talk about like, you say like, what makes like, why should staying CEO versus replacing, when's the right time? I was telling you earlier, I'm doing 75 hard. I'm walking outside for 45. I'm so deep in AI and agentic AI and robotic AI and all these different, models. And everyone's talking about DeepSeek now. And everyone's talking about all these different, where we're going as a future, and it's progressing so fast. And it's like, I've become just obsessed with it. And it's like the tools and resources and what we have access to now is like, it's pretty crazy. And when you become obsessed with it, it becomes inspiring. And that's what's ultimately driving me.
Saw something online today about DeepSeek that, and I don't know, I haven't vetted it or checked on it, but that their terms of service, or the terms of service, that it lets you know straight up, they will listen to your conversations, they will listen to your prompts on your phone, they will sell your data, they will share it with advertisers, they will, like, I mean, so just FYI, something to know about. And now, having said that, I have no idea if the ChatGPT one says that too.
For sure. Well, and the crazy part about it is, do people even care? And I'll tie it to a, look, like with TikTok, the ban for 8 hours or whatever it is, it's like, you would think like the world was ending to TikTok users. I haven't scratched that itch yet, but it's one of those things that it's like, the government is basically saying this is very dangerous. Like China owns this company, ByteDance, Chinese government, et cetera. And people don't care. Like they are literally, it's the same thing. You look at, I think in like certain countries on like cigarette packs, they put like deformed babies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And like, black lungs, and people are sitting there smoking, and it's like, they don't care. And I think it's probably going to be the same thing with DeepSeek. And even if GPT went there, is like, once you become, it's so hard to change human behavior. And once you become hooked, obsessed with something, it is really hard to just say, well, that's not good for me, I should just stop. They're taking my information. People don't care until ultimately they care. And probably by then it's too late.
So what is the future then for Fello? I know you've mentioned getting outside of the real estate space.
Yep.
And you talked about 2,300 teams in the real estate space are on the platform. So what's the total addressable market in real estate? Are you starting to tap that out? Is that why you're looking outside? Or
Yeah.
what is, if we're having this conversation, and we'll have
Yep.
you back on, but when we have you back on, say a year from now, what do you predict the conversation would look like? Or actually, let me ask you differently, because a year is quick,
Yeah.
right? And I really do like the saying. I forget who it was that said it. I don't know if it was Tony Robbins or whoever it was, but we really overestimate what we can do in a year, but we underestimate what we can do in 10. Well, we also underestimate what we can do in 5 and in 3. A year tends
100%.
to be quick. So if we're having this conversation 3 years from now, where do you think we're headed? What do you think that thing sounds like?
Yeah. So, I mean, 3 years from now, we want to be a 9-figure recurring revenue business. We want to be 3 years from now, we'll be in 6 different industries. When you talk about TAM from a real estate standpoint, we've always had this kind of like this pyramid of like, we feel like there's 50,000 teams, small to mega teams within the US, right? So it's like, that's right now, we haven't even scratched the surface on that, right? Then there's about 350,000 producing individual agents outside of those teams. And then there's a lot of part-time, people that we would consider as not a part of our addressable market. And then you basically go industry by industry. So there's about 350,000 loan officers. How many of them are actually, in business and actually would see value in a product like
A
ours?
larger proportion than realtors.
100%. Much larger proportion. Yeah, you don't see a lot of part-time, you see less part-time loan officers
It's like
versus,
it's like an actual real thing to do with your life.
for sure. You're not just doing it on the side while you're
Yeah.
also teaching classes, which there's nothing wrong with that. That's great. But like so it's a higher concentration when you look at the TAM of the mortgage industry. And so that's how we basically look at TAM. And that's how we're looking at like what's important for us is, and I'm already starting to see it and it's so powerful, is here's the way we're planning on building Fello, and I'm super excited about this. And I don't think I'm oversharing. I think it's cool to like cast this vision. We're starting to see real estate agents have financial opportunities for lenders within their database that they're doing nothing with. We see in your database out of town sellers, right? That was a buyer lead, excuse me. That was a buyer lead that came in that's moving from Cleveland to San Diego. And ultimately, you just discovered that they live in Cleveland, Ohio, and you're not doing anything to monetize that opportunity. And so what we're finding is building all of these different industries, these verticals, like is that SaaS product, the database engagement product, and then helping agents in all these different small businesses in these verticals monetize their databases by you selling leads to lenders, lenders selling leads to you selling leads to insurance selling leads to lenders. And what we are like, when you think of like decentralization, like we all spend a lot of money within our industry with these large conglomerates, right? They own the eyeballs, they own the marketplace, and then therefore they sell those opportunities to us. And it really impacts margin for a lot of these teams, right? Well, if you can monetize your database by every person that wants a refi in your database, there's no way for you to monetize that. How can you get that over to a lender, right, that can monetize it? And then ultimately, how can the lender drive a home value lead or a cash offer lead that they can't do anything with? How can they get it over to you? So we're building all these, kind of like verticals from a SaaS standpoint of database engagement, but then there's these synergies of like leads within this network effect or this ecosystem, leads kind of passing back and forth or being basically selling them to different vendors. And it probably sounds crazy, but like that is what we are obsessed with, is how can I help you actually make enough money off of this database, this asset that you've built, monetizing the sellers that you can't, markets you can't service, monetizing refis, monetizing insurance, monetizing auto. How many homeowners in your database also own cars? And when I talk about like data-driven intelligence, how many of their car notes or their car leases are coming to an end? What can you do with a local dealership and partnership? Remember, they're on your home value dashboard. They can also see like a Carfax dashboard as well. And so it's one of those things, I know it's kind of futuristic, but like, this is where we see this big vision. When you think of like the great ideas, the like, oh, damn, why didn't I think of that? We kind of see that as being our true differentiator, is like, cool, we can help you create opportunities out of your database for you, but we can also help you create opportunities that you can monetize in your database for others, in these adjacent verticals and stuff like that.
That's exciting. Glad I'm on board, man. Glad to be, by the way, just full disclosure, right? I don't own the company. I'm not a shareholder. I'm nothing like that. I'm just glad to be alongside you as a client and
I appreciate it.
get the benefit of all that. So, dude, I'm curious. Like, I think one of the biggest things that most human beings would like the opportunity at is if I could only go back, do it again, knowing what I know now.
Yep.
And so I'm just curious, like, you've gone on this really unique journey, especially for a realtor. You've gone on a really unique journey. You have access to, things that you've reached scale that a lot of our listeners, and some of our listeners are in the home services space. Some of them are
Sure.
attorneys, chiropractors, dentists, doctors, shop owners, barbers. I mean, you name it. Some of them are headed toward really, really big things. What are the lessons that you look back on over these last few years in growing this business that, gosh, if you'd only known it then, what are some of those the big lessons, right?
Yeah.
That you can help someone shortcut through the pain of having to learn what you already learned.
Yeah. I would say growth hack everything. Okay.
What does that mean?
And what I mean by that is there needs to be, you have to go so deep when it comes to ideas, when it comes to ways that you can crack codes, when it comes to ways that you can unlock opportunities, right? If the business is purely just, I'm going to grow this by a demand gen strategy, I'm going to buy leads, and this could be attorneys, dentists, et cetera. Like, what is the growth hack? What is the way that you are constantly growth hacking your way into bigger opportunity and growth? And if you're not always thinking about that, then you're missing out on like big scale, big, fast, viral scale. And I'll give you an example of like the way that like Fello does that. Fello, we have agents bring their lender partners onto their dashboards, right? As a way to say like, you can bring a lender in and display them to your audience, et cetera. Well, now we're going to the mortgage industry and I have about 450 lenders that have been brought to us that I don't have to, from an acquisition cost standpoint, I don't have to pay money to go find lenders. I have 450 that are captive. I already have their contact information. Some of them I already have their credit cards on file. So it's like, I can go to them and say, hey, you're on Dan's dashboard, on his home value dashboard. I'd love to talk to you about Fello for Mortgage that we just launched. Your partner absolutely loves it in the real estate industry. When's a good time to chat, right? So these little growth hacks, and like everything is very strategic on the way things are happening, right? What type of audiences can you get in front of? How do you make things go viral? How do you make things shareable so they ultimately, like, there's these unlocks, these like big pops of opportunities? I think that's number one. I wish I would have actually, for the young team, thought through more of the lens of growth hacking versus the conventional, you buy leads, you do open houses. I'll give you an example of growth hacking that you do. You're a marketing genius, right? And like I've seen you say things like, what about anyone whose kids are a junior in high school, right? Or a senior in high school, or I forget how you posed it, but it's like the empty nester campaign, right?
Yeah, the most highest indicator of somebody that's going to sell their home is their youngest child graduates high school.
Yep. And so what if all of a sudden you start sponsoring the graduation event, right? The school graduate. I'm just brainstorming, but like you're like growth hacking of like, there's a highly concentrated audience of people that have a high propensity to sell based on this data point. How do you leverage that? Maybe another growth hack is you start a side business and this is where I start to get a little visionary, right? But it's like you start a side business that is a party planning for high school graduates, right? And it's like you have your friend do it, and this all of a sudden becomes the feeder of all these empty nesters that are ultimately going to feed your real core competency, which is real estate. So growth hack everything. The other thing I would say is hire to where you're going versus where you are, and hire talent to where you are going versus where you are. What I have seen with the young team is the young team has been a very nice business. It's treated me well. We sell 500 homes a year. It's but ultimately we have kind of the same talent from like when we sold 100 homes to 500 homes. When you're in kind of like this high growth, and if I was growing the young team faster, I don't think the talent that I currently have from 100 that I brought on can take me to 2,500 homes. And so I think understanding where you're going and making sure that you have the talent, either you're, I would say, empowering and educating the talent that you currently have to think much bigger to where you're going, but you're going to find yourself at somewhat of a roadblock. And I saw this with the young team, unlike Fello, that I wish I would have done earlier with the young team is make sure that the talent that you have is ultimately has the skill set or the desire to get to where you're going. Otherwise, you find yourself getting really frustrated when you as the visionary have these big ideas of where you want to go, but you ultimately have people holding you back. And I think that's something that I love the young team. It's a highly productive team. It's very profitable. It's a great business, but like we are not, the leaders in that company are not thinking through the lens of how do we get it to 2,500 units a year, homes a year. We're purely looking at it as like, can we get from 500 to 550,
So let's give people an interesting, unexpected little business lesson here and leadership lesson, because maybe not everyone thinks the way I think, but I'm thinking that there's probably people going, how could he say that? His people are going to hear him say that. They're going to listen to this. And I would imagine you're conscious of that as you say it. And so yet you still said it. So walk us through that, because I think that sometimes people are under some strange illusion that like like as if your people didn't already know that.
Yeah.
Right.
So once again, I kind of told you, I'm kind of going off the deep end of just like AI and all this, these things I'm listening to. Jensen Huang, CEO of NVIDIA, kind of, he's said publicly, like, I don't fire a lot of people. I rarely fire someone. If someone is underperforming, I either drive them into greatness or I drive them into quitting, right? And I think it's kind of the same thing with what I'm saying right now is like, I hope my team is listening, and I'd be very comfortable we're starting this whole EOS process, which has been great. We just got through implementation, and it's like, I hope my team would be listening to say, F that, like, I want to be great. I want us to be great. And I'm starting to see that with my team, my leaders that we've kind of brought into it. And some of it, I'll take extreme ownership. Some is a lot of it is my fault for not investing into them and helping them grow. I've kind of held them back as well. But I would rather tell that to their face and challenge them to be great and take us to that next level, or replace them and, release them to the world where they can go find the opportunity where they're really comfortable. But like, if you don't want to, if you're surrounded by leaders that don't want to be uncomfortable, they're going to struggle. You will hit a ceiling. And I have found that within the young team, and I think we're kind of in this like inflection point where we are going to see as the leaders we've just appointed in this leadership team, right? And in making all these investments into them, either they're going to take the young team to this next level that I was never able to do, which there's nothing more than I would love, especially with my brother leading it, or they're going to stick at selling 500 homes a year or 450 or 550 or whatever it is. And it's always going to look like, oh, it's Ryan's team and you guys are just kind of keeping, holding down the fort. But it's like, Fello, that doesn't work. Fello, we have like very large, very aspirational growth plans. If you bring on a leader from when you get to 1 million in annual recurring revenue to 5 million, well, that's a very different leader than someone that's taking you to 50 million, unless they are so hungry, they are so, scrappy and will do anything they can and they're investing in themselves and you empower them to keep growing and they're surrounding themselves with other bigger leaders and mentorship. But those are very rare and those are special people. And if you have someone like that, you do everything you can to invest more and more into them and they will take you to places that you never thought you could be.
That, my friends, is leadership. So, dude, that is really, really awesome. I'm so thankful that you came on here. I'm very, very impressed. By the way, if it wasn't obvious, I think it is. young team, his real estate team from years back, which gave birth to those ideas that ended up becoming Fello. Fello being his tech company that we spent the majority of this talking about, that is on a massive growth trajectory. But Ryan Young, dude, it's just fun to have you on, man. I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
I'm just honored to get your time and the way that you share back. And dude, it's just been really, really cool to see it happen for you. So it hasn't happened for you. You've driven the thing, made it happen, and I know the way you're working day in, day out. So fun to watch. We're gonna cut out. Before we do, what book are you reading? I see all these great books behind you.
Yeah.
What book are you reading right now? Might not be one of those, but which one is it now?
Yeah, so it was a John recommendation. I'm reading that Steve Jobs book about just like simplicity. I forget what it's called, Simple or something like that. So John coached very close with Dan and myself. So it's just all about how Steve Jobs and a lot of their marketing efforts and the way they ran Apple, which I find is very fascinating, of a lot of the marketing campaigns that they did. So it's like, think simple, think iconic, think like all these, kind of like the logic behind a lot of the campaigns, which has been great. And I'm excited. I'll wrap that one up, and then I'm going to start getting into a lot more of psychology. I feel like psychology is kind of where I find myself, even like Eckhart Tolle and a lot of Tony Robbins and a lot of, all kinds of interesting stuff. That's like the next phase for me.
Love it, brother. Dude, this has been great. That is Ryan Young, Fello. If you want to go check out what he's doing, you can see Fello. It is I'd say, the biggest thing to hit the real estate business in several years. And it's going to be fun watching your story, man. So we'll see you around. Look forward to catching up
I'm
with you.
looking forward to the next one.
Hopefully we get out on a little road trip somewhere. Maybe you'll meet me out on the road.
I would love it.
You could drive what do you have? Like maybe a moped, a motorcycle. I'll be in my RV.
It's like Dumb and Dumber.
I'll carry the tent for you though, and we can pitch it outside.
Dude, let's hit the slopes, man.
All right. Well, that would be really great. So we'll see you guys next time. This is Masters of Business, and we're out.